Welcome everyone to DerekJ Speaks, and today we are covering Night One of WrestleMania 38, WrestleMania Saturday, live in AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas. A sold-out show with a packed crowd, all there to see a lot unfold. There's a lot to unpack with this show. Started off a little slow with the first 2-3 matches, but once the bigger main events started, the show picked up big time and turned out one of my favorite WrestleMania shows in the last few years. I would say going back to maybe WrestleMania 31 in California, that was what I would consider the last really fantastic WrestleMania show. And this one, at least tonight, I would say ranks up there with that. We had an incredible Raw Women's Championship match with Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair. We had a really good Smackdown Women's Championship match with Charlotte Flair and Ronda Rousey. You all know I have not been a fan of the build-up to the match, but I did say that I expected the two of them to go out there and have a great match, and they did. The finish, but I believe it's to set up something bigger. So 2 great women's matches on this show. We had a huge return in the Seth Rollins match. They didn't play any games. They didn't try to swerve anyone. They gave the fans what they wanted, what they've been asking for, what they've been calling for, what the rumors have been running rampant about for the last several weeks, that being Cody Rhodes coming out in the full big-time main event presentation that he has had for the past several years in AEW. It was essentially all transplanted right into WWE, and the match, very good match, but outshined alone by the surprise and the special nature of Cody Rhodes appearing. And in the main event, for the first time in 19 years, Stone Cold Steve Austin actually wrestled a match. That was what the initial report was all those months ago, that when Austin would appear at WrestleMania, it would be to have a wrestling match with Kevin Owens. But then we heard word that Austin didn't really want to wrestle, and they somehow met in the middle by doing the KO show segment. But the commentators and everyone hyping this whole KO show stuff these past several weeks were very vague. They were talking about how this was the first time in 19 years Steve Austin would be at WrestleMania. Obviously a bold-faced lie, because WWE loves to think their fans are idiots sometimes, but I understand why they were playing coy with us, because they didn't want to outright say it was the first time in 19 years Steve Austin was going to wrestle. I'm sure because they did not know Steve Austin was going to wrestle, probably not until a little bit closer to showtime. I'm sure we'll get more news regarding that as the days go on. But yes, overall, very good WrestleMania show, and we will go ahead and get into all of it from the very beginning, starting with the pre-show, the 2-hour kickoff show that was just that, a kickoff show. It had the panelists outside the stadium, almost akin to college football Saturday mornings, where you'd have all the panelists outside the stadium running down the game. This ain't college football, and there is only so much they can talk about when it comes to WrestleMania, especially with Night One. We had a bunch of video packages, which we were already getting sprinkled throughout the show. We had it on all throughout the TakeOver show earlier in the day. We've had it all week on the TV shows. It was a lot. There's only so many times you can hear the commentators force into your brains hearing the word stupendous and talking about how this is going to be the most stupendous WrestleMania of all time, and just going through that over and over again. And what's really unfortunate is that we ended up in a situation where a match that was scheduled to take place on the main card ended up having to be cut due to time. It became very clear as the show was drawing to a close that the originally scheduled tag team match with the New Day, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods, against Sheamus and Ridge Holland was going to be cut for time. And then I believe Sean Ross Sapp on Twitter was the first person to break that news, which, that sucks. I know it was not really a match that a lot of people were really into or excited about, but you gotta know, for the talent, it's a big deal for them to appear at WrestleMania. There was already so few names who were not going to be on the WrestleMania card. You had two mid-card champions who were both relegated to wrestling on Smackdown the night before. And so for these guys to come out at WrestleMania, especially someone like Ridge Holland, who it would have been his first WrestleMania, to see their match get cut, it's very unfortunate. Kofi Kingston tweeted about it. I believe Sheamus also tweeted about it. I didn't see his tweet, but I did see Kofi's, and he said he was hurt, but he understands it, and all they can do is move forward. So hopefully they can remedy this. They can throw the match on night 2. That's the benefit of having 2 nights of WrestleMania. If something gets cut from the first night, you can just throw it on to the second night. And if they don't think they have a place for it on the main card, just put it on the pre-show like it should have just been on this night. You have a 2-hour pre-show. You have enough time to fit that tag team match. So hopefully they will get their chance to shine tomorrow night on WrestleMania Sunday. But as for this night, we open things up on the main show with the Smackdown Tag Team Championship match. The Usos defending their titles against the team of Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs. Nothing overly special. It was just your regular standard tag team match with the Usos. A lot of super kicks and dives and things like that. Rick Boogs showing off his strength. Nakamura doing stuff that only Nakamura can do. It really wasn't an overly spectacular way of starting the show, but it was what it was. In the end, Nakamura got hit with a super kick in the corner and got laid out with the 1D, and the Usos retained their tag team titles. I figured going into this show, Nakamura and Boogs are a very good pairing, but I do not see them as being the team to dethrone the Usos, who they announced as the longest reigning SmackDown Tag Team Champions up to this point. So, didn't see their reign coming to an end on this night, especially to Boogs and Nakamura. So the Usos win in the opener. Up next, Drew McIntyre versus the undefeated Happy Corbin. I mentioned in my predictions that they only just started mentioning the fact that Corbin has been undefeated in singles competition as of a few months ago, when this feud really started to kick off. And I said the only reason that they mentioned that was so when Drew McIntyre beats Corbin at WrestleMania, it will, in theory, feel that much more special. It did not, but Drew McIntyre still won in a decent match. It, again, nothing really special. The effort was there. The work was solid. Drew McIntyre was super over with this crowd. They loved McIntyre. They did not like Corbin all that much, or Madcap Moss, but they were super into McIntyre and his sword, Angela, and that made the match a little bit more tolerable. I have been sick of this feud, and I was hoping that this would be the blow off to it, and it appears that that may have been the case. We see Corbin hit McIntyre with the end of days at one point, only good for a 2 count. That was significant only because we rarely ever see people kick out of the end of days. That is one of the most protected finishers in all of WWE. So to see McIntyre kick out of it was a pretty big deal. McIntyre hit the Future Shock DDT, did the countdown in the corner, launched out, connected with the Claymore kick to Corbin, right square in the face. 1, 2, 3. Drew McIntyre gets the well-deserved win. Well deserved and important because hopefully that signifies the end of this feud. After the match, Madcap Moss was up on the apron. McIntyre was staring him down. He had the sword in his hand and he raised it above his head and he went to strike Madcap Moss. McIntyre was about to decapitate Madcap Moss live in front of this packed crowd here, but luckily Moss got out of the way and McIntyre just ended up slicing the top rope and that entire rope collapsed in the ring. So got a big ovation from the crowd. McIntyre went around ringside. He fist bumped the announcers, Michael Cole and Pat McAfee, and posed with the crowd. Like I said, they were really into him. So despite this lackluster feud, the fans have not lost their love for Drew McIntyre, which is nice to see, especially if he will eventually be built up as a future challenger for whatever the world championship is going to be coming out of WrestleMania against whoever the world champion will be coming out of WrestleMania. We'll deal with that tomorrow night, of course. Up next was the big celebrity tag team match, the first of several during this weekend. It was the Mysterios, the father-son duo of Rey and Dominic Mysterio, taking on the team of The Miz and Logan Paul. I did not have high expectations for this match, but I did think that Logan Paul would be a great heat magnet, which he was. He got tremendous heat all throughout this night. He honestly was even more hated than The Miz. And the Mysterios, they benefited. They got huge pops simply because they were counter against Logan Paul, who the Dallas crowd here just absolutely despised. Logan Paul, he did come to work. He had his working shoes on in this match. He hit Dominic with a running power slam at one point. He hit a blockbuster coming off the top rope. So he was impressing. He was impressing me with some of the moves that he was performing in this match. At one point, he squared off against Rey Mysterio and even hit the Three Amigos on Rey Mysterio. He connected with all three. I thought Rey was going to counter out of the third one. Nope. He hit him, connected with all three of the suplexes, had Mysterio down, went up to the top, started doing the Eddie Guerrero shimmy, a very weak, lame version of it, but it got good heat. The crowd was booing the hell out of Logan Paul here, and he connected with the frog splash. But Dominic broke the cover right at the last second. He barely made it in to break the cover. The Mysterios got back up. They started to double team Logan Paul, hit him with a double 619. Figured Logan Paul would have to be on the receiving end of that move, seeing as how The Miz suffered that fate on Raw the previous week. So it was Logan Paul's turn here. He got hit with the double 619. He was down. They went for the cover, but The Miz came back in. He broke it by slamming Dominic on top of Rey Mysterio. Then The Miz, I guess he made the blind tag, or he was a legal man. I'm not entirely sure. Either way, he was the legal man at that exact moment, as was Rey Mysterio, which is why Miz picked up Rey Mysterio, planted him with the skull-crushing finale, and got the win. So The Miz and Logan Paul together beat Rey Mysterio and his son Dominic. Rey Mysterio loses to YouTube sensation Logan Paul. I did not see that coming, but at least it was The Miz who got the cover and it was not Logan Paul. I don't know how I would have been able to feel about that, seeing Logan Paul beat Rey Mysterio. So it was better that they gave the win to The Miz. And so the crowd is just absolutely hating the sight of Logan Paul and The Miz standing tall. And then we get a close-up on Logan Paul and Miz's face, particularly The Miz's face, and we see him have a slow turnaround looking over at Logan Paul, and then he lays him out with the skull-crushing finale to a thunderous reaction. Up to this point, this was the biggest pop of the night, and looking back on it, it still was one of the bigger pops of the entire night. The Miz laying out Logan Paul with a skull-crushing finale, turning on his own tag team partner. I predicted it was going to go the other way, that Logan Paul would turn on The Miz and they would try to present him as this big baby face and endorse the Mysterios, but they did not do that. They had The Miz lay him out. So I guess kudos to them. So The Miz, the actual wrestler, if the heels were going to go over, it's good that The Miz was the one who actually scored the fall and he laid out the celebrity that all the fans hated. So whether intentionally or not, The Miz turned babyface on this show. So there you go with that. Up next, we had Stephanie McMahon come out and she was saying stuff. And then she introduced Gable Steveson, the former Olympian who, in case you don't remember, was drafted to Monday Night Raw. Not sure when he's going to appear on Monday Night Raw. I don't even know if he has really been training that much for an in-ring debut yet, but they had him appear before the crowd here. He got a pretty big applause, but there was really nothing more to it other than that. And so, with that out of the way, those first few matches were whatever. Not the strongest start to WrestleMania. At this point, you're thinking, all right, I guess we'll see how the rest of this card goes. But the very next match was for the Raw Women's Championship. Becky Lynch defending the title against Bianca Belair. This was one of the matches that I was looking forward to the most. Going into this show, I knew that if given enough time, Becky and Bianca would put on a tremendous match, and they did just that. I think even looking back on it, this was easily the best match of the night. I'm sure some people would disagree. Some people might say the Rollins-Cody match was better, or they might say the Ronda-Charlotte match was better. I know Becky ruffled a few feathers earlier in the day where there was an interview that she was conducting where she mentioned how she didn't care if Ronda and Charlotte was the main event because her stuff was automatically better than anything that they were doing anyway, and that she knew that what she and Bianca were doing was going to be better than anything the other women were going to do on this show. And I hate to say it, but she was right, because this match was fantastic. The entrances were great. Becky came out looking amazing, looking like a complete star. Bianca Belair had the college marching band treatment. She had TSU, the TSU marching band, playing her out. This was a fantastic entrance. This was really awesome to see. Got chills, got goosebumps seeing this. And Bianca Belair comes out, very big time main event like entrance for Bianca Belair on this show. And for the second year in a row, in a big main event level spot for Bianca Belair, she goes out there, looks like a star, and puts on one of the best matches of the entire night, and already in the running as being one of the better matches of the entire year in general. So the match started off very similar, albeit the roles were reversed, as their SummerSlam match last year. This time, Bianca was the one who extended the hand out for Becky to shake, but Becky reared back and clocked her right in the face. Becky was going for the manhandle slam. Bianca tried to turn it into the KOD, slipped out. Becky did connect with the manhandle slam, but only good for a 2 count. And then the match proceeded to go on from there. We saw Becky at some points early on tugging at Bianca's hair. Her long ponytail was pulling at it and pulling her and throwing her around with it, even whipped her into the steel steps on the outside. At one point, both women were on the outside, and Becky was leaned up against the ring apron, and Bianca was charging at her. Becky kind of flipped her over her head, and in doing so, Bianca kind of pulled off a handstand on the apron, bounced off the ropes, came back down, and got Becky in position to hit her with a suplex right on the floor at a very sick thud of a noise, but the crowd loved it. We saw Bianca with Becky up on her shoulders while standing on the middle rope. She came down and just had Becky crash on the top turnbuckle. With Becky down, Bianca went up top, hit the 450 splash, only good for a 2 count. A little bit later on, Becky Lynch went up top and looked like she was going for some type of diving senton on Bianca, but she didn't really get all of it. The heel of her boot kind of connected with Bianca right in the head, which looked like it sucked, and she went for the cover, only good for a 2 count. Bianca was going for the KOD, but then Becky was grabbing onto the top rope trying to avoid it, and then Bianca just dumped her over the top rope out to the outside anyway. So there was that. Back in the ring, or I'm sorry, not back in the ring, on the other side, on the outside of the ring, Becky ends up planting Bianca with a manhandle slam onto the flat steel steps. So just right smack dab on the steps. Bianca's laid out, looks like she's done for. Becky gets back in the ring, encouraging the ref to go ahead and proceed with the count. And as the referee is counting, Bianca breaks it. I think she broke it at like 7 or 8 or something like that. So not even the big dramatic wait until the count of 9 break it. So she broke it pretty early. She got back in. Becky went for a roll up, only good for a 2 count. At this point, Becky's getting frustrated. She's getting pissed off. She lifts Bianca up, but Bianca manages to catch herself, gets up on the top turnbuckle, does a backflip off, gets Becky up for the KOD, hits her with the KOD, and gets the 1, 2, 3. And Bianca Belair is your new Raw Women's Champion, the first woman to win the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships respectively 2 years in a row at WrestleMania. It is miraculous that she got as big of a pop as she did, but I would say their handling of Bianca, even with the 26-second bullcrap that they did at SummerSlam last year, the way that they have handled Bianca and have kept her strong in these last few months has been pretty good. She couldn't really overcome Becky. It looked like the feud was over, and Becky basically told Bianca to move to the back of the line, which she did, and she worked her way back up. The way that they were handling and protecting her character these last few months has been very good, and you knew all signs, all roads had to point to WrestleMania as the culmination and blow-off of this feud. Bianca getting her redemption after suffering that embarrassing loss at SummerSlam, and of course the fact that Becky Lynch, every day that she has been an active roster member since WrestleMania 35 back in 2019, she has been a champion, and this was the first time she actually lost her championship after being pinned or submitted. So a big fight feel. The crowd was fully into it. I was into it. The match was excellent, and in my opinion was the best match of the night, and very glad to see Bianca regain the championship. Where they go from here, I'm not sure. Outside of Becky, I don't think there are too many top prospects, at least heel-wise, for Bianca to feud with. I can live 10 more lifetimes without ever seeing Bianca Belair face Doudrop ever again. They wrestled each other for like 5-10 weeks in a row. I don't ever need to see that match again. Becky, I'm not sure where she goes. I'm sure she'll get some kind of rematch after this, but outside of that, I'm not sure what's next for her. But at least on this night, great stuff, and happy for Bianca Belair. Up next was the big mystery match. Seth Rollins, who has been clamoring to get a spot on the WrestleMania card for weeks and weeks now. He was told by Vince McMahon himself, you will have a match at WrestleMania. Just go out there, go to the ring, and that is when you will find out who your opponent will be. Of course, the rumors have been circulating for weeks that Cody Rhodes was signed, sealed, and delivered to WWE, and his first big match would be at WrestleMania against Seth Rollins. They had a few opportunities to present Cody on Raw, but they never did it. They decided to save him as a surprise for WrestleMania. This past week, news started to swirl around that they might pull a swerve. It came out that Shane McMahon was going to be brought back in for WrestleMania weekend, and people started to take that and run with it, with the possibility that they might have Shane come out and be Seth's opponent. Some people were throwing The Undertaker's name out there, especially after the Hall of Fame, where he ended his speech saying, "Never say never," which I say, nah, we good. This was not the spot for Shane McMahon. This was not the spot for The Undertaker. This was not the spot for Veer, who is still coming. Apparently he will be on Raw this week. I'll see it to believe it. This was not anyone else's spot. This was not the time to try and play games with the crowd, to try to swerve them and deflate them and think it's somebody else, but then pull the wool out from under them. No. You had one job, which was deliver what people were expecting. Now, not everyone knew. Not everyone follows along with these news items and reports and rumors and speculations online. You have plenty of people who just watch the shows and they are surprised and shocked just like the rest of us. And for those people, and even the people who do follow along, this was still a special moment. The lights went out and a very familiar theme song played. There was no smoke and mirrors. There was no dashing Cody Rhodes. It was the Kingdom theme song that Cody has been playing. People were saying his AEW theme song, but this is not his AEW theme song. This is Cody Rhodes' theme song. He has had this theme song since he first left WWE and appeared in the Indies. He had it in Impact. He had it in Ring of Honor and New Japan. He had it long before AEW was ever a fully developed concept. So this was not just exactly a carbon copy of AEW and their presentation of Cody Rhodes. This is a theme song that he has had for several years now. But it was still good to hear it. Cody came out, got a huge ovation. Once the lights went out, the people knew. They were already chanting Cody, but they waited for the crowd to die down a little bit, and then they turned the lights out, and that first riff of his song and that opening line, "Wrestling has more than one royal family," the crowd popped instantly, and out came Cody. Big ovation, had the pyro, all that. It was great to see. You don't get moments like that. I know this was not a total surprise for everyone. People, I'm sure they're going to talk about how they knew that this was coming, but it was still a very unique, special moment for a WrestleMania. This is the time for moments like that. WrestleMania is the place where you get these big, shocking surprises that really impresses the crowd, really makes you proud to be a wrestling fan. It made me proud to be a wrestling fan. It's stuff like this that takes me back to those days, those earlier days of WWE where stuff like this would happen a little more regularly. I guess the fact that this really does not happen at all makes this a little more special, but it was still really great to see. So he gets in the ring and he is just playing it up to the crowd. And of course, the match starts and they were having a pretty good match. It was a little rough in certain spots. Cody Rhodes, there was a little bit of mistiming and miscommunication with him and Rollins at certain points in this match. But overall, I thought they had a very good match. If you take away the surprise factor and the crowd reaction, it really was just a standard heel babyface match. There was nothing overly special about it, but with the full investment from the crowd and the fact that this was the first appearance of Cody Rhodes in WWE in several years. In fact, the last time Cody Rhodes appeared at a WrestleMania was at WrestleMania 32. So this was a huge, huge deal here. So the match itself, again, very basic. At one point, the camera picked up on Seth Rollins telling Cody, "Welcome back to the big leagues, bitch," which I thought was pretty funny. The match continued on from there. Cody hit a moonsault on Rollins. Wasn't the prettiest, but it connected enough, but it was only good for a 2 count. Rollins, with Cody on the outside, hit a buckle bomb. He just launched Cody into the barricade. I thought that looked like it sucked for Cody, but visually it looked great. Back in the ring, Cody ended up hitting the crossroads on Rollins, only good for a 2 count. Rollins got Rhodes up on the top turnbuckle, had him reversed, and hit a dragon hold Falcon Arrow. So basically a reverse Falcon Arrow where he does the superplex, but he does so with Cody landing front first. So hit him with that, only good for a 2 count. They tried to do the pin and power up spot, but couldn't quite do it. So they just basically abandoned it, moved on, which was for the better. They got up. I was about to say Triple H, no, but Seth Rollins was going to hit a Triple H move. He was threatening to hit Cody with the pedigree, and then Cody reversed it, and he had Rollins down with his arms underhooked. He was doing this a little bit in AEW towards the last few months of his run, where he was teasing whenever he would do that he might hit the pedigree, but instead he hit the Tiger Driver. But again, only good for a 2 count. Cody also hit Rollins with the Cody Cutter, which was very weird hearing Byron Saxton call it the Cody Cutter, only because I am so used to hearing Excalibur or Tony Schiavone on Dynamite call it the Cody Cutter. This is going to get some getting used to here. But Cody hit the Cody Cutter, only good for a 2 count. Rollins did end up hitting the pedigree, which I'm sure that is just amazing. All those pot shots and digs that Cody Rhodes was making at Triple H in those early days of AEW is very fitting that in his first match back in WWE, he gets hit with a pedigree. I thought that was pretty cool, but it was only good for a 2 count. Rollins had Cody down. He was going to set up for the stomp, but Cody prevented that from happening, and he got Rollins in position, hit him with the crossroads, still was holding on to him, got him back up, hit him with another crossroads. He started playing to the crowd, really getting energized up, amped up, and he started throwing the rapid punches, very paying homage to his late father, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Even hit Seth Rollins, I should say, with the bionic elbow. That got a huge pop from the crowd. Then he got Rollins up, hit him with a third crossroads, and got the victory. Big moment here for Cody Rhodes. The fans were 100% into this entire thing, as was I. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, the match, you take away all the bells and whistles of it, it was just a very standard match, but I thought on this stage at WrestleMania, with the crowd fully into it and with the shock of Cody Rhodes being Rollins' opponent, I thought it was really great. Rhodes looked good. Rollins, he played his role up too. The fans were not trying to be cute and cheer for Rollins. They were firmly against Seth Rollins here. He was the clear villain, and Cody Rhodes got a huge babyface reaction, which was also nice to hear because, as you recall, those last few months of Cody in AEW, the fans started to turn on him there. There were very loud boos for Cody Rhodes in those final months of him in the company. For whatever reason the crowd turned on him. He got pockets of cheers here and there, but overall, he and Brandy Rhodes, for that matter, were both getting very strongly negative reactions from the crowd. And so to hear on Raw these last few weeks the fans chant for Cody every time Seth Rollins was out there teasing he's not going to make it to WrestleMania, and then to hear the reaction for Cody here tonight was just all a wonderful moment to see. Where does it go from here for Cody? I have no idea. I have no idea what Cody is going to do. I assume he will be on Raw going forward. And with the way he was presented here, the theme song, the look, everything, he came off as a bigger star in this single match than he ever has at any point when he was in WWE before, because he has become a bigger star since leaving WWE, since being on the indies, helping to grow and build and birth AEW, and he was basically treated like a king all throughout his AEW run. Even at times where there was not a whole lot for him to do, his segments were still considered some of the more important key segments of the show. Even if they weren't the best parts of the show, they still got a lot of focus. So you have to think Cody is going to be presented as a top guy on the show. I mentioned this in my predictions video. A lot of people have been mentioning this. WWE has an obligation now to treat Cody Rhodes like gold if they want the tide to turn a little bit in their favor, because perception more often than not is, oh, WWE is the big bad corporation. They fire people, they release people, they let people go, they do nothing with them. So everyone always leaves and ends up in AEW. That's home, that's the sanctuary, that's heaven for these people. Now, with Cody Rhodes, one of the former EVPs and founders of AEW, leaving and coming back to WWE, it is in their best interest to keep Cody as strong as possible and make him come off as a top guy. So then when you have guys in AEW who feel that they are not being treated the best, who feel they're not getting the best TV time, they can look over at WWE as a much better prospect and say to themselves, hey, well, look at what they're doing with Cody. Clearly it's not too bad. It wouldn't be too bad for someone like me. Not saying that's going to be the exact reaction of everyone, but it can be a little bit stronger provided what they do with Cody Rhodes going forward. So I'm not sure what the immediate future holds, but on this night, it was great. We have the Hall of Fame segment up next. They ran down the Hall of Famers, everyone who was inducted the other night, or last night I should say, or 2 nights ago. It is now officially Sunday, so it was back on Friday night. And of course, the main inductee was The Undertaker, who did appear on this show in front of the crowd, got a big ovation. The standing ovation that The Undertaker got at the Hall of Fame ceremony was legendary. It was one of the greatest ovations I have ever heard for any individual person. The fans that night were ready to see one person and one person only, and that was The Undertaker. And they had a long, sustained standing ovation for him that lasted a good 90 seconds, maybe even a little bit longer. And we had something similar on this show, although The Undertaker really didn't do much. He came out, basically waved, and left. But still good to see him. Next up was the Smackdown Women's Championship match. Charlotte Flair defending against Ronda Rousey. This one shocked me. I was not seeing the outcome of this match coming. I think many people were calling the fact that they brought Ronda Rousey back at the Royal Rumble. Apparently the plans were in place for Ronda to return and win the Rumble, going as far back as November, maybe even late October. Plans were all set, and so the thought and the expectation by many people, myself included, was that they're going to go to WrestleMania, Ronda Rousey's going to tap out Charlotte, win the SmackDown Women's Championship. But that's not what they did here. They had Charlotte retain the championship over Ronda. The match itself was very good. I was going into this show saying, and I wasn't the only one, saying how the build-up really was not all that good. The promos these two were delivering really was not all that great, and the way they positioned this match as the main event of WrestleMania Night 1, I was saying, not really feeling it. But then it became clear that this was not going to be the main event of WrestleMania. But still, I wasn't really feeling the feud. I wasn't feeling the chemistry between Charlotte and Ronda. But I did recall the one lone singles match the two of them had at Survivor Series in 2018. That match was excellent. So I knew that they had the capability to go out here on WrestleMania and put on a damn good match. And that's exactly what they did. I would say I liked their Survivor Series match just a little bit better, although that one had a cheap DQ finish, and this one at least had a pinfall to finish the match. But I would say I give the edge to that match from what I remember, but this one was a very good match. Altogether, the women on this entire show definitely killed it and had the two best matches of the entire night. So props to everyone. Props to Becky, Bianca, Charlotte, and Ronda for putting on the two best matches of the entire night, in my opinion, at least. Of course, going into this, the story was that Ronda is a one-trick pony. She only knows the armbar. Charlotte Flair can't make her tap out. Charlotte Flair herself will not tap out. So it was very submission-based storytelling here. They both were locking in different submission holds on each other. They both ended up locking in ankle locks on one another. We had Ronda go for the arm bar. Charlotte locked in the figure 8. Ronda became the first woman, according to the commentators. She became the first woman ever to reverse the figure 8. I find that very hard to believe, only because the commentators do not have any credibility, because they lie to us every week. But I think they might be right. I don't know. I don't really have much care to check. But still, Ronda reversed the figure 8 here. She got Charlotte up, hit her with the Piper's Pit, but it was near the corner. And so when she covered Charlotte, the referee counted 3, but it was on 3 when he noticed that Charlotte had already had her foot on the bottom rope. So he waved it off. We see Charlotte hit natural selection, only good for a 2 count. And then she had Ronda down and was going for the figure 8 again. And when she did so, Ronda kind of kicked her off, and Charlotte ended up spearing referee Charles Robinson, easy for me to say, took him down. So he had a ref bump, so you knew this was not going to be good. Ronda locks in the armbar on Charlotte, and Charlotte starts tapping. So now already we have had Ronda get a 1-2-3 visual pin on Charlotte, and she has made her tap out. So she's already beaten her twice, but the referee waved off the pin, and the referee was knocked down for the submission here. So Ronda went over, tried to wake up Charles Robinson, got him back up on his feet, and then she barely turned around when Charlotte came charging at her with a big boot and got the 1-2-3. So Charlotte retains her SmackDown Women's Championship over Ronda Rousey. Like I said, I thought this was a very good match, probably the second best match, technical best match of the night. And I imagine this is going to set up a rematch. Because like I mentioned, Ronda had the visual victory on 2 different occasions in this match. She did get a 1-2-3 on Charlotte, even though Charlotte's foot was on the bottom rope. And she did make Charlotte tap out. So, technically, storyline-wise, she probably should have won. You could say she was screwed, but not really. No one really interfered or anything like that, so you can't really make the argument that she was screwed over. But she does have a reason for wanting a rematch. So I could see them probably doing a rematch between the 2 women at WrestleMania Backlash. Maybe a submission match stipulation. People thought that this match would have the submission stipulation. Maybe the rematch will. And I imagine there, if they have any plans of putting that championship on Ronda at all, maybe they'll do it there. I think here they just wanted to swerve everyone who felt that Ronda Rousey was going to get a victory here. They just wanted to throw everyone off scent and give Charlotte the win, knowing that Ronda will probably just go ahead and win the championship anyway next month. But good stuff between the 2 women here. I mentioned earlier that it was around this point where it became very obvious that the tag team match was cut out, because right up next was the main event, the KO show segment with Kevin Owens and his special guest, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I know there are some people who were very upset that neither of the women's championship matches closed out the show on this night. To that I say, I'm sorry, but when you have Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania in Texas, you gotta close the show with him. There was no, looking back on it, could you imagine if any of those other matches went on after this? This was This was it. This was what a lot of those people in the crowd came to see. They came to see Stone Cold Steve Austin kick Kevin Owens' ass, and that's exactly what happened here. Of course, the segment started out with Kevin Owens coming out just completely drowned out in boos and what chants, and everyone just waiting for Austin to come out. Kevin Owens was delaying it. He said Austin will come out when he's ready for him to come out, and he started to trash Texas again. That was the whole starting point for this entire thing, was when Kevin Owens started to badmouth Texas a few months ago right out of the blue. And then, shockingly, the Austin news started to come out. So Owens was back to his old habits, bad-mouthing Texas, said that he was considering apologizing for all he said, but then after being in Texas for several days, he talked about how it's even worse than what he was saying. So the crowd's booing, they're just hating Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens says he's going to go on a little bit longer, and that's when the glass shattered, and out came Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's like clockwork. It's the easiest thing in the world. Just hit the glass shatter, and out comes Steve Austin, and the crowd goes wild every single time. And not only did he come out, he did not come out with jeans and sneakers and just looking like chill, relaxed Steve Austin. No, he came out, wrist taped up, Austin 316 t-shirt, the cutoff jeans, the knee braces, the boots. He looked like he was ready for a fight, a match, and little did we know that's what was going to happen. I was going into this just thinking that it was going to be a fight, but I was pleasantly surprised by what we got. Austin, he was out on the stage, and then he went right to the back. Kevin Owens, he started to laugh while he was in the ring. He was looking over at the commentators, and he was laughing. But then Austin came back out, riding down the ramp with the ATV, just riding all around ringside. See, I knew that he was going to come back out with the ATV because if you notice, when they cut back to the ring, the steel steps were gone. And the only time they have the steel steps taken away is when Austin comes out riding around on some type of vehicle around ringside. So I thought that was a bit of a giveaway, but it was still really cool. So Austin gets in the ring, just complete thunderous reaction from the crowd. There's not a care in the world for what Kevin Owens is saying. Austin was tossing around the KO show set items. Kevin Owens, he's saying, cut the music. This is my show. Austin's not going to come in here and disrupt that. So we get the two of them. They both sit down and start having a little chat. Austin badmouths Owens, calls him a jackass and a stupid son of a bitch. So typical Austin stuff. Of course, we have the what chants. KO, Kevin Owens, he was not having it. He was still talking trash about Texas. He did not like all the profanity from Steve Austin, but he lowered his guard and he talked about how he did not want Austin to come out and just be a guest on his talk show. What he really wanted was to challenge Stone Cold Steve Austin to a match right here, right now. And he challenged him to a no-holds-barred match, which got huge yes chants from the crowd. Austin did not immediately respond, and Kevin Owens was talking about how Austin, he knows he's scared. He knows he will not accept the challenge because he's scared, he's washed up, all this and that. Austin takes the mic, talks about how many years ago he had his first ever professional wrestling match right here in Dallas, Texas, and now on this night, he would have his last. He got the oh hell yeah from the crowd, and he accepted the challenge and called out a ref. And never have you seen a referee running down to the ring get as big of a reaction as this. The fans were really perking up here. They started a holy shit chant because they realized what was about to happen. And the referee got in, Austin and Kevin Owens went face to face, and they rang the bell. And just like that, for the first time since WrestleMania 19 in 2003, after losing to The Rock, Stone Cold competed in his very first match back in a WWE ring, and he proceeded to whoop Kevin Owens' ass for a majority of it. He started to stomp a mud hole in him. You know, the whole stomp a mud hole, walk it dry thing. Just starts stomping on Owens' chest in the corner. At several points throughout the match, he was drinking his own beer, his own IP. He had his own Austin beer that he has, and he was just drinking it randomly. He was drinking it. He was spitting it at Kevin Owens. He was drinking it a little bit, and then he was pouring some of it out because that's a pretty heavy beer. This ain't the light beer that Austin is used to from back in the day where he could just chug a bunch of it and he'd be cool. He was probably getting a little buzz, if we're being honest, but he was still doing very well. Austin was a little slower in his movements and all that, but so what? It's Stone Cold Steve Austin. Who cares? The fact that he was out there doing anything was tremendous. He got "You Still Got It" chants from the crowd, which, you know, whatever. But he was dominating Kevin Owens for a good chunk of the match. Kevin Owens did get some offense in, though. He rammed Austin into the ring post. Both men started to fight out in the crowd. They were fighting out there. Austin took a suplex bump on the ground in the crowd. That was probably one of the most shocking things of the entire night, that he took that bump. I was not expecting anything like that for Austin here. They come back down towards ringside. Austin is over by the announce table. Kevin Owens is standing on top of the barricade, and Austin just chucks him and slams him down on the announce table. Did not break. Made a loud thud and looked like it sucked, because it did. Would have been better off breaking. I don't know if it was supposed to break or not, but it did not look fun for Kevin Owens. Let me give my respect to Kevin Owens here, because he was bumping his ass off for Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was making all of Austin's stuff look good. All the punches, the stomps, the clotheslines, everything. He was looking like he was having the time of his life out there, just making Stone Cold Steve Austin look like $1 million. So that was great to see. We see Austin go down. Owens goes over to the ATV that was parked in the entranceway, tries to start it, doesn't know how to. Austin comes from behind and just grabs him and then forces him to take a joyride. So they ride all the way up the ramp, up onto the stage. Austin, as a receipt for that suplex that Kevin Owens hit on him, he hit Kevin Owens with a suplex as well on the stage, hit him with another one. They make their way back down towards ringside when Owens hits Austin with a stunner. He hits him with the stunner right in the middle of the ring, goes for the cover, 1, 2, kick out right at 3. So Steve Austin does not stay down to his own move, which I find funny, because anytime anyone else, including Kevin Owens in recent years or in past years, would ever hit the stunner and it would not finish off a match and they would only kick out at 2, Austin would always, on Twitter, jokingly so, I'm sure, but he would always say, you know, that should be the finish. But I thought it was funny here, where in his first match back, he kicked out of the stunner. But it was really cool. Owens gets a steel chair. He goes to use it on Austin, goes to swing at him. Austin moves. Owens hits the top rope. Chair bounces off, hits Owens right in the face, and Owens turns around right into a stone cold stunner. 1, 2, 3, and Steve Austin wins his first match in 19 years. Does the beer bash stuff. He celebrates with people in the crowd, has the beers thrown up at him. He even celebrated with his brother. His legitimate brother was there, and they shared a moment in the ring together. I thought that was very beautiful to see. He hit Kevin Owens with another stunner. He even brought Byron Saxton off of the commentary table, bring him in there. They shared a beer together, and he laid out Byron Saxton with a stunner as well, which got a big pop, not only from the crowd, but also Corey Graves on commentary. So, just fun. Fun doesn't even really do it justice to describe this entire segment here, this match. This was amazing. This was way more than I anticipated Steve Austin was going to do, and it was great. It was great to see, and it was the perfect way to close this WrestleMania show. It was the perfect spot for the main event. of this show. So Steve Austin, is this going to be one and done? Is he going to make a comeback? Is he going to wrestle again? I don't know. I wasn't fully sure that he was going to wrestle this match, only because Austin has been so hesitant over the years of ever coming back for another match. Out of all the guys who have retired and come back and retired again and come back again, Steve Austin has always been the one guy to stick to his guns and say, I'm not coming back. I'm not going to wrestle again. And even here, where the report was originally that Austin was going to wrestle and that he turned it down, maybe that was just to throw everyone off. And this was always going to be a match. But Austin looked good for the limited time that this match went. Owens, of course, was making him look great. Again, props to Kevin Owens on this show. But, yeah, if there is a reason, if there is a logical reason for Steve Austin to wrestle again later this year, then sure. But I'm more of the opinion that we can just leave it here and let this be a nice one and done. Big pop for the crowd, but that's enough. And seeing Steve Austin wrestle in his very first match in 19 years, and Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen, a Ring of Honor staple for many years, get to wrestle in the main event. Just a few months ago, we were not sure if Kevin Owens was going to re-sign with WWE, and he did, and look what he was rewarded with, a main event spot at WrestleMania with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Can't get any better than that for him. I believe he even said in interviews or in comments or whatever that this is going to probably be the best thing that he ever does in his career. So, great stuff here. Like I said, fun, just so much fun. That's what you can say for those last few matches. You can take away those early parts. They were fine enough, but starting with the Becky Bianca match all the way to the end, this was an incredible show and one of my personal favorite WrestleMania shows from top to bottom in many, many years. Those last few matches were just too good or just too special to give this show anything less than a huge thumbs up. So night 2 tomorrow, or I should say tonight, is going to have a lot to live up to, but I'm sure they're going to try. I'm not going to run through my predictions again, but at least the biggest one, when it comes down to Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, who's going to walk out the champion, I'm not sure. I know I said Roman Reigns, but with knowing that Brock Lesnar is going to be around a little bit longer, that does throw a little bit of a monkey wrench into it. But ultimately, I do think I'm still going to pick Roman Reigns to walk out as the unified champion on WrestleMania Sunday. But as I said in my predictions, I do not believe that is going to be the last image we see for WrestleMania. I think coming out of this weekend, the two biggest stars that will be talked about will not only be Stone Cold Steve Austin, but will also be another name from that same era. Won't get into it again, but we'll see how night 2 comes to an end. So I will be back here to talk about that, and then I'll be back on Monday night to talk about all the fallout from WrestleMania weekend on the post-WrestleMania Raw show. Looking forward to it. I pray for night 2. Going in, I didn't think night 2 on paper looked as strong as night 1, but competition is the best thing. It's a great motivator for a lot of these guys, so we'll see what they do. I'm looking forward to it. That's it for me, and I will see all of you tomorrow night. So, thank you.